back to my show, y'all. Today I've got a Jackson V that has a bit of a ski slope down here. A ski slope is when the last 5 or 6 frets start taking a rise at the tongue. They call it a rise in the tongue. A real good fretboard should fall away. It should go down a little at the end here. And this is how you test for it. If you're checking your string action, your relief, and you set your straight edge between the 1st and the 12th fret, you should be able to put a feeler gauge here, and it shouldn't go through at the 12th fret. A perfect fretboard, you wouldn't be able to put a feeler gauge through, and this is a 2.5 thou. See, it's really sitting right on these frets up top here. Another way you can look, because a perfect fretboard would have relief in between the 1st and 12th fret. That's where you'd get all your relief. Most of it would be here in the middle. And then starting here at the 12th fret, it would fall away and go back down. So what happens if I put the straight edge at the 24th fret in between the 7th and 24th frets? The same thing should happen. I should have the high spot here and a low spot here where I could put a feeler gauge, but I cannot put a feeler gauge. Let's zoom in a little. Let's see what's happening up here at the top. What I have between the 7th and 24th fret is that starting at about the 20th fret, I can start putting that feeler gauge in, which tells me that these frets are rising up here. The problem is with this, if you have your action set at 5/64ths on the bass and 4/64ths on the treble, you probably won't have any issues. But if you want to push the envelope and get your action down to like 3/64ths here and 2.5/64ths on this side, which is super duper low, you'll start hearing every string, every fret. You hear metal on metal. Hear that buzz? Doesn't matter which fret I play, you hear the metal on metal. And let's look at these humongous dents here. So this will give us an opportunity to dress and recrown and polish the entire fretboard, as well as take that ski slope right out of the wood. When I take those top 6 frets out, I'm going to sand the wood down, take about 1 millimeter off of it, and then reinstall the frets, and then do the fret level. And that should turn out real nice. Stick around, folks. Show you how I do it. Next, I take nitrocellulose lacquer and drop in about 4 drops into each screw hole. They say this prevents the ski jump from happening in the first place, but I don't know what happened. They probably had a shim in the neck pocket at some point when it was on a different guitar. I'm going to pull these frets out with my fret pullers, and they gave me no resistance whatsoever. Came out clean. It's almost like they came out by themselves. Okay, I had to give a little wiggle here and there, but they came out real nice. Next, I'm going to take her down and sand it. But first, I have to measure the thickness of the fretboard. It's a 5.7 millimeters in the middle and 5.2 on the edges. I'm going to sand with this 80 grit sandpaper. It has a 15-inch radius, like I said, And the piece of leather in between the wood and the sandpaper really is good to keep that 15-inch radius. Now I measure it again and I'm about down to 5.3 in the middle, and keep going for a little while. Keep measuring and I get right where I wanted it to be. I only took off about 0.8 millimeters total. Then I clean it up. Now I'm going to check the fret slot depth. The very highest 3 frets were getting a little shallow, so I went ahead and used the refret saw. It has teeth that go on the pull stroke or the push stroke, depending on which end you want to use. I wasn't getting too far with that saw, so I broke out the big one. And what this did is it removed that filler that was on the fretboard edges. Stick around, I'm going to fill those in with a dark brown wood filler. I used hot fish glue. I just warmed it up a little bit. It was in a glass bottle. Dropped it on these X-Acto blades and put it on in the slot. The frets had to be re-radiused to about a 12-inch radius where they flatten out a little bit when you pull them. So I ran those through my fret radiuser and hammered them in. That was very satisfying. These frets went in really nice. There's the warm fish glue coming out. A little eyedropper. It doesn't take too much. The other thing I did was chamfer the fret slot edges with a triangle file. That also helps the fret barbs move their way down through that rosewood. Line it up, hammer it on home. Now I take this piece of sheet metal and cover the highest 6th frets. A 15-inch radius block goes on top of the metal. And then I take my bar clamps and clamp it down for a few hours. Maybe overnight. I'm not in a big rush to finish this job in one day, so I don't mind taking this step and kind of guaranteeing that these frets aren't going to wiggle their way out of the fretboard. After I declamped it, I had to loosen the truss rod quite a bit to make it come back up into a flat position. I got to do that before I level the frets. If I take my straight edge and place it on the frets, now what we see is a 0.010 of an inch fall away over the last few frets. This is what we were shooting for in the first place, was to create a little fall away on the fretboard extension. Now I take blue Sharpie on the tops of each frets. That way I can check my progress as I file. This is a fret leveling file. It's a snap file. And it's got some good weight to it, so I don't need to grab onto it real hard. All I need to do is kind of push it back and forth and let the teeth do the work. I can take that fret leveling file off and replace it with the diamond file to take some of them scratches out. And that's real easy because it's on a magnetic base. Here's the dark brown wood filler. It's just a wax fill stick that you can get at the big box store. It's for furniture repairs, you know, when you get a scratch on your dining room table or whatever. It works pretty good for just packing it into 3 fret slots. Just kind of push it in, and then after it's all filled in, you kind of scrape it off. And I'm going to take a quick little 2 or 3 coats of shellac and brush it on real quick. After it dries, which is only an hour later, maybe 2 hours, you can hit that with a little steel wool and it all blends back together. Looks like nothing ever happened, actually. On to fret crowning. I'm using 3 different files. These were some big, fat, tall frets, and I had to hog off quite a bit from the tops to get those dents out. I take about 15 to 20 swipes with this big camp file. Then I go to my smaller triangle file. Just 3 or 4 swipes on the top and bottom of each side with this file. Kind of meets them together. And then finally, the diamond Z file. After the filing and the crowning, I sand the frets with 400 grit, 600, 1000, and 1500. That gets all the scratches out. And for a super fine, high glossy shine, super fine steel wool. Next time I'll bolt the neck back onto the guitar at this point so it's not rocking and rolling all over the place. Well, thanks for watching. Appreciate you tuning in. Hit the subscribe button and get the alerts.